Welcome to episode 10 of SDRs on Mars. I'm here with Faris Alrabi, and we're going to learn about being a salesperson from Faris today.
Yes, we are.
So, I want you to intro yourself a little bit here, Faris. Tell us what you do, who you do it for.
I work in sales development for Aiven, so I'm an SDR. Without getting into too much details, essentially my job is to connect people to the right person within our sales organization to make sure they have the information they need to make an informed business decision. So my job is to bring in business to generate interest as well as qualify inbound opportunities. And then when that happens, just make sure they have the information they need, they're talking to the right people so they can make their decision accordingly.
Awesome. And I'm really glad that you just pronounced Aiven as a company name because I would have butchered that for sure.
A lot of people do say Aiven at first. And then
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Yeah, that happened to me too.
Cool. So you've been at Aiven for a couple months now?
Yeah, roughly two.
Okay, cool. And
Yeah,
so where is Aiven based?
they're actually based out of Helsinki, Finland.
Right.
Um,
Okay, cool.
yeah, so it's a Finnish company, started back in 2016. And over the past year, the expansion has been just ginormous. So January 2020, they had 40 employees. We are now 180.
Holy crap.
Um, yeah. So when they reached out, they were like, we are growing aggressively. And that a lot of companies tend to say that. But then I actually looked at the numbers. I'm like, they weren't joking. They actually
Yeah,
are.
that's a lot. Okay, cool. So if they're in Finland, I'm assuming you don't make it out to Finland too often. So where are you working out of right now?
I'm working out of home from Calgary, Alberta here, and I am so part of that expansion that I just mentioned is the North American market, obviously, which is huge, especially the US. So my job is to handle West Coast prospects and clients for Canada and the US.
Cool. Okay. And so the role of an SDR can kind of vary a little bit from one company to the next. So what is the goal of your SDR? Is it like lead generation? Do you like get more involved with the sale after that? Tell me a little bit.
So it is sort of if we're really going to simplify it, my job is to book meetings with account executives. So it's to generate interest, book meetings with an account executive. So the difference between this specific SDR role at Aiven compared to SDR roles I've had before is I'm a bit more involved in the process after that meeting is booked. So I've had roles in the past where when the meeting is booked, that's sort of the end of my involvement. So I'm not even part of the meeting itself.
Right.
Right now at Aiven, I am part of the what we call it a discovery call. So that initial introductory call where you're kind of introducing the prospect to Aiven, learning a bit more about the prospect, what they're looking for, and kind of setting some next steps. So I am part of that call. I sort of bridge the gap between the prospect and our sales organization and sales team at Aiven and what we do. And then past that, when it kind of gets into, the more technical side of things and where there's sort of more the pricing and the building of a business proposal and that type of stuff, my involvement is less, but I still have visibility into what's happening.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. And so that kind of is actually going to cover one of my following questions. But I guess what I'm interested in to start is like, who are the people you're targeting? Who do you want to try and talk to for this?
Very good question. So typically, ideally, I would say people at the VP and director levels. So decision makers at organizations, and it's typically someone who is either director of cloud architecture, or let's say a director of DevOps, for example, VP of sometimes sales engineering as well. It depends because some organizations kind of have it configured differently.
Hmm.
But people at that level, sometimes CTOs as well. You know, uh, Again, depending on the size of the company and their involvement in the process, but people within that sort of director, VP, CTO realm that influence the final decision as well as have the technical background to understand what it is that we do. Those are typically um, the people that I'm trying to target.
Right. And what is it that Aiven does?
Very good question. So let's see how I can simplify this. So we manage open source database infrastructure in the public cloud.
Okay.
That probably made zero sense. I will explain. So there's different types of technology. There's open source and there's proprietary.
Hmm.
Proprietary is pretty self-explanatory, meaning a company owns the technology, you pay a subscription fee or a licensing fee, and you kind of just use it and it's theirs. Open source technology is technology that's just available for everyone to use. They can just use it and kind of edit it and mold it into what they need it to be. So that's what open source technology is. And what we do is we manage open source database infrastructure in the cloud. So there's an on-prem version and there's the cloud version. So a lot of older companies, you'll find that they still utilize on-prem sort of methodologies, whereas obviously over the past couple of years, the shift to kind of having everything over to the cloud is really where it's at. So that is what we do, and we're partnered with some pretty big cloud vendors that do that. So really, to simplify it, our goal and our mission is to make developers' lives easier. So typically at companies, developers, part of their job is to manage their data infrastructure. But really, if you're looking at what a developer should be doing, it's developing. It's either developing a website or an app, or if you're in software or SaaS, you're developing the software service that you're going to be selling. But these companies, a lot of companies who sort of manage their data infrastructure in-house rather than have other companies manage it for them, you're kind of taking away from what developers should be doing, right? So they're spending part of their day managing their data infrastructure rather than focusing on what makes the company money. Because as a company, you don't get paid to manage your data infrastructure. You get paid to sell a product or a service.
Hmm.
So we manage that data infrastructure so that these developers can actually focus on what makes money for these businesses. And I think in a lot of cases, people think, well, if you're outsourcing management, you're paying extra money. But when you actually run a TCO analysis, like the total cost of ownership, and a lot of factors go into it, but on a very high level, you have to think about, okay, well, if you're managing it in-house, you're going to have to pay for the hardware. If it's a data center, you're going to have to pay for that as well. The management of the service, you're paying people money to manage this, but you're also losing out on the time that they could be spending actually contributing to things that make money for the company.
Hmm.
A lot of things go into it, but at the end of the day, we have what we offer really does lower the total cost of ownership for a lot of companies. One example is there was one company, I'm not going to mention the name just for privacy reasons, but we switched them over from on-prem to the cloud, and they saved north of $800,000.
Wow.
$800,000 a year. Like you could spend that on R&D. It could go back into the business. You could spend that hiring more people. There's a lot you could do with that money. So
Yeah.
that is sort of what we do is we manage the data infrastructure for companies so that they could focus on what actually matters for them.
Okay, perfect. And so you mentioned that you want to get on the phone with like VP level, CTO level kind of people. They can be hard to get on the phone sometimes. Like I try it myself, and it's a hit or a miss. Do you have any like sort of tactics or strategies that you use to try and do that more consistently?
Yeah, so there's a few. First off, you have to have multiple channels that you're sort of using. You can't rely specifically on the phone. Like you said, they're typically quite busy. Even if you do get them on the phone, the chances of them sort of being available to actually have a conversation are quite slim. So you have to kind of use several channels to get a hold of them, whether that's through LinkedIn or like we were talking about Vidyard, whether that's through emailing. You have to kind of make them aware of who you are, and then leverage that to be able to have that conversation. And another thing that I would also recommend is not necessarily, so I'll have, if I'm targeting an account, let's say it's 1,000 employees at this company, I'll have, let's call it 10 people on my list from that company that I'm going to be targeting, out of which a couple of them are going to be, at that VP, C level or director level. And I'll also have some people that are maybe senior managers that aren't quite at that director level. They do have influence. They might be part of the decision-making process, but they're typically more available than people at that high level. And maybe me talking to them is not going to get me the answers that I need, or it's not going to get me the decision. They're not going to sign off on a yes or no, but at the very least, they might be able to kind of point me in the right direction, or be able to kind of connect me to that person at that VP or director level. So my end goal is a VP or a director, but sometimes that can go through a different channel.
Right, that makes sense. Cool. Um, awesome. So I guess what I'm wondering now, we've kind of built up to it. I'm like, tell me a little bit about how this discovery process goes. Or I guess you were calling the demo a discovery process. So I want to know about your qualification process.
Cool. I rely quite heavily on LinkedIn Sales Nav. That's sort of my go-to tool. I have a lot of flexibility in terms of which companies I want to target, me specifically. So I will go in and, for me personally, I'm trying to grow more presence, more Aiven presence in the Canadian market. So I'll try and find companies on the West Coast. I'm specifically targeting SaaS and technology companies and software companies because they're just a natural great fit for what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a much smoother sort of conversation when you have people that are sort of in a similar industry and kind of know what's happening. So I'll look for companies within that industry. I'll look at the company size, if it's available, their annual revenue, to kind of get a better sense of where they're at. If it's a startup, if they're at Series A, B, C, D funding, that gives me a sense of if they have the financial capabilities to be able to kind of spend some money. And then once I've sort of identified a list of accounts or companies, I go in and I kind of go through the employee list, and I kind of search based on what it is that we have to offer. Types of software that we manage, people who sort of have the know-how to understand what it is that we do, and are at a certain level where they can influence or make that final decision. So Sales Nav kind of gets me there, and then it's Zoom info or Lead IQ to kind of be able to get their contact info, and then everything else is done through outreach.
Right. Okay. And so the everything else, like actually getting them on the phone, like what's that talk track look like?
So I always start my sequences off with emails. One, it's a good way just to maybe, if they actually open the email, to kind of have the name Aiven, or at least my name, pop up, so that they have some sort of, like, if I mention my name, they might be like, I feel like I heard that somewhere.
Right.
You know what I mean? And also, I will check out their LinkedIn profile and leave them a profile view. Same thing. The idea is just to be like, I feel like I heard that somewhere. And then when I'm actually on the phone with them, a lot of the time I will reference the email that I sent. I am finding some success with open rates. So I would say mine is fairly good. It's not the best,
Yeah.
but it's certainly not the worst. So a lot of the times when I do call someone, they've already opened the email that I've sent them, which I use as a frame of reference. So I'll say, I actually did send you an email, some information. If you'd like to go back and take a look at it, you can feel free to do so. But the summary is, or the reason for my call really is, and then just kind of give them a brief version of, straight to the point, this is the reason for my call. I know you're probably busy. If you want to go back and take a look at, a bit more in-depth information, the email's there for you. My contact info is there as well.
Love it. Cool. And so what are some common objections that you might run into in this kind of process?
I think just like any other salesperson, the not interested
Yeah.
objection, and it sucks, man. It does, because it's like, and sometimes you have to find a way to pivot, because what I've been trying to do, and what I always try and do, is not necessarily stop there. I'm not a very pushy person, and I'm not the type of person, if you say no, I'm not going to be like, but this, but listen, but you know what I mean? I will, what I try to do is understand why it's a no. It's like, did I catch you at a bad time? Is it budget related? Is the timing for your company not right for you to be looking into this? And sometimes they'll be responsive, and sometimes it's just like, this dude it's really does not want to talk. It's just like, no, I'm just not interested. I'm like,
Okay.
well, that's three not interested in a row. I feel like this conversation can't really go anywhere else at this point. Um, but yeah, so not interested is a common one. Another one that I face, in the sort of SaaS or DBaaS field that we're in is, oh, we've already got a team that handles that, or we manage that in house right now. So that's another one. There's also we're really busy right now, and this is not a priority. So this is not really the best time to be having this conversation. So I would say those are the top three.
Right. Okay. And just for the purpose of like, I just want to understand a little bit how you might handle one of those objections. Why don't you just pick
Mhm.
one?
Um, I'll try and maybe quickly go over more than one. So the not interested one is I sort of combat that the exact way that I just mentioned is, try to get a better sense of why it's a no.
Yeah.
No does not mean I'm gonna pursue you till the end of time. I understand when a no's a no, but sometimes a no is a no, not really because they're not interested, because they just don't want to be on the phone with you. Sometimes they're in the middle of the meeting. Sometimes they're on their lunch break. Sometimes you just caught them at a bad time and they just do not want to be on the phone with you. So they're like, I'm just not interested. Don't call me. And some if it's like that, and you can really tell the tone when you're on the phone with someone, you can kind of gauge, um, what they're feeling.
Hmm.
So you can kind of pivot off of that. If it's just like it's very clear they're in the middle of something or caught them at a bad time, sometimes a follow-up email or a call like a month later could actually go a long way. Be like, listen, it seems I really caught you at a bad time last time. I was just wondering if you had 30 seconds for me to kind of see if that's still something that's on your radar. That can kind of work. So the not interested is read the room, but if there is an opportunity, get a better understanding of why.
Okay.
Um, and then if it's like, oh, it's not a priority right now, that's completely understandable. When would be a better time for me to reach out when you guys might be more open to this or have the budget for it or whatever the case is? And a lot of the time people will say, oh, like in 3 months or whatever. It's like that. Perfect. So I'll set a time on whatever, the 13th of September. I'll send you a quick calendar invite. If anything changes before then, feel free to reach out. You can edit that calendar invite too. So at least it's a placeholder,
Hmm.
It's like that conversation. You said 3 months, I'm going to do my best to reach out to you in 3 months. If that 3 months, if 2 months down the line you need something, that's great. If it turns out you need 4 months instead of three, it's still there. So yeah, I think you need to read the room. I think you need to sort of get a sense of why they're saying no. And then, be able to sort of pivot off of that and see if there is any future potential to be able to talk.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Cool. So now I'm curious, with these different strategies and in very technical product, what do you
Mhm.
think your most useful sales tool is?
Um, that's a good question. I think it's a combination of several. There's really no one go-to that I've found success with. There's not like one specific thing that's been like, this has been amazing. I'm not going to use anything else. I think it does have to be a diversified approach to it. Like I said, multi-channel really is the way to go, in my opinion. You can't rely on one thing because even if you do, sometimes things happen, priorities happen. If it's email, spam happens. So you have to kind of have a diversified approach to it and see which sales tool or combination of sales tools works best for you. I think phone and email is a very natural sort of combination. I think they work together really well. If you start off with email and you reference that during a phone call, I think that's a good thing.
Hmm.
Likewise, if you're having a conversation, if you wanted to start off by phone and then be like, I'm just going to send you a quick email right after we're done. And I found that to be very successful as well. As after I've got someone on the phone, I typically follow up with right before I hang up. I'm just going to send you a quick email right after we're done. The subject line is going to say this. My contact info is going to be there. If you have any questions, reach out. Typically, when I hang up, I send that email. They open it. Whether or not they're
Interesting.
interested is a different story, or if it
Yeah.
actually amounts to anything. But they actually do open and kind of learn a bit more about what the conversation was about.
Cool. And you've tried a couple different sales roles now. Inside sales, outside sales. More like physical product sales. Why do you like sales? Why do you keep coming back to it?
That's a good question. I know we're short on time, so I will make it as short as possible. I think it's a combination of different things. I think it's a lot of people like to use the term people person during interviews, but I feel like I actually am a people person. I enjoy interacting with people. I enjoy talking to them, especially when it comes to sort of an inside sales capacity where you've got inbound leads or people actually interested coming to you for help. They're like, I am actually interested. I just need to know, how much is this going to cost, or what is the best option for me out of, what you guys offer, or I really don't know what I want. I need your help to kind of figure out what it is that works best for me and my company. When someone comes to me for help, and I'm in a sort of a consulting capacity, I have the information that I need to help them out. I really enjoy that. And when you get an email or a phone call at the end of it, and it's like, oh man, because of you, like this event was a success, or my boss is super happy, or whatever. Like that's super rewarding to me. It's very gratifying. So that's one element of it that just I love sales because of that. But it's also sort of I'm a competitive person, and having numbers to hit, kind of pushing myself, having a goal in mind. I know what it is that I'm working for. That really helps push me. So it's a combination of both those things, I think, that really makes sales really enjoyable for me.
I find the competitive thing really interesting. Like, growing up, I wasn't like an all-star athlete really with any sports, but I played a lot of sports and I got used to the competitiveness. And then I stopped playing sports and I was like, what? Well, how do I compete?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's just a thing you have, I guess. It's just something within you. You either are super competitive or you aren't, or maybe you are to a certain degree, and then you're like, I'm kind of past it. So, but yeah, to me, it's always like I've never been the type of person who will say I want to be part of a company or a team or whatever just to be part of a team. I've never been. I don't want to just take part. I want to be someone who is a leader. Like when I leave a company, I want to be remembered as one of the best to do it. So that's always been my goal, and that's one of the things that sort of motivate me to kind of keep doing what I'm doing.
Cool. And so I'm interested to hear your perspective on this as well. If you're considering different opportunities to work as an SDR, what do you think are going to be some factors that help you decide what company or which role to take?
For me personally, career growth is number one. If I see the opportunity to grow within a company being more than some other options, that will likely be number one on my list. Um, Two, obviously, pay is a big part of it too. Everyone wants to get paid, so you have to know what your worth is, how much experience you bring to the table, and if you're being compensated fairly. Um, Especially within an SDR role or within the sales field, there's a lot of different combinations of what your OTE is. Some companies like to give you a pretty high base, and then the commission is going to be, a quarterly payout based on if you've hit certain numbers. For some other companies, they don't pay you that high of a base pay with the specific intent of motivating you with commission. So there's different ways to kind of approach it. For me, career growth is always going to be number one. I know no one wants to be an SDR their entire lives. I know for sure I don't, you know. So I know I want to be an account executive. So whenever I approach a new role, or this was sort of the approach to this role that I'm in right now with the company switch and everything, I kind of looked at it like, what is it going to look like a year or two from now? Am I going to be in a position I want to be in? How do I get there? Is this company or is this sort of industry going to get me to where I need to get? Am I going to be paid fairly? And can I see a future with this company? That's another huge thing for me because I don't want to be the type of person who's going to jump around from company to company. So can I see a future here? Is there going to be career growth? Am I going to get to that position that I'm going to get to? Am I being paid fairly? That's kind of it for me.
Cool. And if you were talking to someone who's like, thinking about a sales career or what different careers should be, what would you say in terms of like considering a sales career?
I would say it's a great career option because all companies will either have a sales or a business development department, whether it's oil and gas or tech or telecom or whatever the case might be. There will always be a sales component to it. I would say though, understand why. If you're interested in going into sales, know why, and ask yourself if you see a future within the industry. Because as much as it is awesome and super applicable, you have to be resilient. You have to be adaptable. You have to have thick skin, and you have to be patient as well. So, and I think obviously that does apply to a whole bunch of different roles and industries, but in sales especially because when you're generating business and interest and things like that, you have to be patient. You have to be understanding and adaptable depending on who you're talking to. So I would 100% recommend it, but I would also think about why you would be interested in sales and ask yourself whether those are things that seem like you can work with.
Right. Okay. And so kind of going back to that a little bit, how do you get ready for your day of like sales and the grind of making cold calls and all that fun stuff?
Um, I've been over the past week or two, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on cold calling, just trying to get better at it. Just because something is working doesn't mean it can't get better. So I always do try to continuously improve. The cool thing about my job right now is my job is not just a cold call. Like I said, I utilize different channels, which is awesome. I like video art a lot because it's a new creative way to get in touch with people. So I'm hoping to expand on that a lot as well, just kind of the video tools that are available. So I think uh, research is a big part of preparing for cold calling. Um, just being super honest and honest and transparent rather, when you're making the calls, I think is super important because it's always going to be intimidating. There is no secret formula that's not going to make cold calling intimidating. But one thing that I've been experimenting with that I've actually found to be quite nice is literally like coming out of right off the bat, just being like, I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is a sales call because when you do that you sort of address the elephant in the room right away. In a lot of scenarios when you're cold calling and a person picks up, a lot of people in sales will tend to avoid saying that it's a sales call or basically just ask questions to try to get the info without really kind of asking what the call's about. And the other person, their sole purpose when they pick up the phone is to be like, who are you? Why are you calling me? What are you trying to sell me? So if you kind of address that right off the bat, it kind of takes the edge off a little bit. It's like, oh, and that is one thing that I've kind of been using as well. So know who you're talking to, do your research, experiment with different things, always learn. It honestly has made it less intimidating for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. That's an interesting one. I have to consider that as well. Okay, cool.
And listen, sometimes it backfires, but sometimes it actually works. Like, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that they're going to be like, "Oh yes, please sell me stuff." Um, but I did that before, and one guy he laughed and he goes like, "Oh, I know," and we both had a good laugh, and we kind of got to talking a little bit. It didn't pan out, but we did have, the nervousness and the edge kind of went away when both of us were on the same page. So I think
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
thing to
yeah.
experiment with.
I can appreciate that transparency for sure. Cool. So you have a busy day, I guess, of researching and prospecting through your various channels and things. How do you take a step back and get away from that work for the day?
As in during the day or after the day's done.
I'm not sure.
Um, during the day, so I typically start my mornings off with a bunch of meetings with different departments, with my manager, things like that. So after my meetings are done, I typically need a break. I can't sit still for like 3 hours just doing the same thing. So I always do need to take little breaks. Um, those little breaks kind of during the day, just saying hey to my parents, or going to grab some coffee and watching a funny YouTube video, or 5-10 minutes of a sitcom I'm watching or something like that, just to kind of unwind a little bit and just kind of space out before getting back into it. And then after the day, just do nothing sales related and game. I do a lot of gaming, and I'm a couch potato. My bed is my natural habitat. So when the day's done, it's kind of relaxing, unless I'm kickboxing, which I'm into. So yeah, just kind of doing things that don't involve using mental capacity.
Right. Okay, cool. Awesome. And so you mentioned, you want to find a place where you think you can grow a little bit. So I guess that kind of segues into my final question here pretty well. What's next on the docket for you? And actually, it could be career related growth. It could be just like, what are you up to this summer?
Mm. Quickly addressing what I'm up to this summer is, as soon as I'm getting my second shot, I am booking a ticket to anywhere that has a beach. So that is definitely part of the plan. I need to travel. In terms of what's next, in terms of career growth and positions and things like that, my goal has always been to be an account executive. When I kind of went into sales, I knew that that's what I wanted, what I was after. I made it clear in my past job. I made it clear even at this job when I was kind of interviewing, like, that is my goal. That's what I'm working towards. That's the position I'm gunning for. So I'm not going to cut any corners. I will do whatever I need to do to get there. But that is definitely the position that I'm after.
Right. Cool. That makes sense. Awesome. Well, I think that's pretty much all I've got for you today, Faris. So thank you for joining me on the show.
Thank you
If
for having me.
if anyone wants to learn a little more about how you can help them with cloud-based uh, infrastructure management, no.
That is actually really good. Props, Jeremy. That's really good.
Yeah,
That's
I'll
how you
make sure
nailed it.
to tag you in this post, and people can see how to get in touch with you as well that way. Okay.
Awesome. Awesome. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you, Faris, and have a good one today.
You too, and take care.